Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Pearl Daily and welcome to the Audacity Network. If you guys haven't already, please support my work at theaudacitynetwork.com. That's theaudacitynetwork.com. And you can do this by signing up for our monthly or yearly memberships. These memberships help us bring out guests to the show. You know, we like having guests in studio. That stuff is expensive, so that is what it helps fund, as well as our documentaries that we are working on. Um, okay, so today's show, we have a couple of topics that I'm going to get to. Now, the first topic, I was scrolling on Twitter and I saw a clip that was going viral, and it was labeled, "That's exactly what a hardworking family man would love to hear. What an amazing wife. This is beautiful." Now, let me show you. As you know, in the media, a lot of times we cover some pretty difficult clips to consume. So for me, I thought this was such a nice change of pace where we have a woman that is grateful for her husband. So let me play it.
We're thriving because of you. Like, I'm able.
Let me start it from the beginning. Sorry, guys. Okay.
We're thriving because of you. Like, I'm able to get a new phone because of you. I'm able to go get my eyes tested and get new glasses from because of you. I'm able to have somebody come in here and clean because of you. I'm able to make a meal for not just our family, but Crystal and Brad because of you. Like, you're not just keeping us afloat, you're thriving us. And I appreciate you so much. Like, the way you lavish your love on us is insane. Like, you take such good care of us. You are such an incredible provider. And I don't just mean financially. Like, you're an incredible provider for our family. Like, I had expectations of what you were going to be like, and you have far surpassed them. Like, I am overwhelmed with what a great provider you are for our family. I am so blessed, and I'm so grateful that you're my husband. I just want you to know that. Okay? I just love you so much.
So, myself and many of my friends quote tweeted this video. And all of our reaction was, "That is adorable. That is so cute. It's so nice and heartwarming." But what was surprising to me was that my male friends had a very different reaction. One of my male friends said that she doesn't mean it, and another male friend said that it was performative. I thought to myself, why? This is such an adorable, cute clip. What could you possibly say that's wrong? And what it actually shows is how women, we value words of affirmation, right? That is when we are doing something right, we like it when people tell us. That doesn't really matter to men. Our actions matter much more than that. And one of my male friends' first comments was, if she really meant that, she would lose the weight. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up isn't because I'm trying to be a Debbie Downer, because I really think it's a cute clip, but to show what men value. Words of affirmation are nice, but they care much more about putting your money where your mouth is. The second observation that my male friend had was that the entire house was a mess, that there was stuff everywhere. And his observation was, again, if she really meant it, she would put her money where her mouth is and show him. And I think so many times these clips go viral, and women, it's interesting because women, we view these cute clips or we'll see couples content and we'll think it's adorable, where many men see it as performative. And the reason they see it as performative is because many men feel like an accessory in their women's social media. And oftentimes when this stuff is posted, the way and it's interesting because I didn't initially see it like this, but when getting a couple men's perspectives, the way they see it is that women post things in order to make themselves look good. So oftentimes the message of a post is using the family for clout. Now, I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I still thought it was a cute clip. But what was interesting to me was just the difference between the men's perspective on it and the women's perspective on it. Um, okay, so that was my first story today. Now, I was gonna cover Ye. I put this on Twitter that I was gonna cover Ye getting divorced, but I guess he's still staying with his wife, so I guess not particularly today. Yeah, look at this is what the men are saying in the this is what the men are saying in the chat because I think a lot of times women we do what we would want. So maybe women would prefer to be posted on their guys' social media, right? That's a common complaint. But men don't really care about that stuff. In the chat, they're saying that's so fake, that's so cringy. And I'm not saying it was, but what I am saying is that's how a lot of men are going to see it is this is just words, this is just a performance. It's not actions. Also, guys, if you want your chat to be read on the Audacity Network, go to the live chat. Snyder says, Pearl, I saw that reality today. Fantastic. I said on Facebook. Thank you for tuning in, Snyder. It's good to see you as always. All right. So the next story I'm going to cover today is I saw the most interesting account on Twitter. So I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw this man who was a private investigator. So his profile is called Private Eye Russ, and he's a licensed PI, a bail bondsman, and an executive protection specialist. And his Twitter has the most interesting account or the most interesting stories that I have seen. Basically, where he is hired by men and women to at times investigate their significant others. And it was just the most interesting account. So I had to have him on. Welcome to the show, Russ. How are you today? I can't hear him. Oh, it's okay. Sometimes. Okay, go ahead. Is it on our end or theirs? Okay, it's our end. Just hang tight 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, guys, let me read the chat while we're waiting. Yeah, this is the whole chat is saying it was fake. It's so funny because as a woman, I thought it was the cutest thing ever, but all of the guys said this is nonsense. I was like, what? Hi, welcome to the show, Russ. I think we can hear you now.
All right. How are you, Pearl?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you for having me on. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I love your Twitter. I'm so happy it's getting traction now because I just thought it was so um the stories were so unique and you're a very good writer. So I feel like I know all the characters when you're writing.
Well, you know what? I have to pause for a moment and give you a shout out and a thanks because you're the one who inspired me to actually start posting.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So that was you. So
um
thank you.
yeah, of course. Well, I know unique perspectives on social media when I see it. So, um one of the interesting posts that you've had recently was your experience with sex workers.
Yes.
And that, okay, so could you give them an overview of maybe your ideal client first, or like who tends to come to you to look into
You
people?
know, it's kind of all over the board. I classify what I do as problem solving.
Mhm.
And so, people come to me when they have issues. Obviously, these are issues that the police can't take care of for them. They want some of these problems solved discreetly. And so, the average client has changed a lot, it's morphed. But when we're talking about investigative work, a lot of families and even corporations have been engaging my services to check out potential spouses. Um, that happens a lot. That's happening a lot more. It used to be that only old money vetted a potential mate that thoroughly, but new money, and there's a sliding scale of how far you go and how much it costs. So everybody can afford to do a certain amount of investigation, but when you go really, really deep, then we're talking about people who have a lot of money, but not just a lot of money to spend. They have a lot of money to lose, and so what they'd rather do is make that investment in the front end to make sure they're not their loved one or their business partner, which has happened, or their son is not marrying, or their daughter is not marrying someone who has a hidden past.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, what I find is wealthy people want to know, they want bad news right away. They'd rather know the bad news on the front end versus be surprised on the back end when it's much harder, much more difficult to get themselves out of it. So wealthy people, and as well people who don't have as much money, are engaging my services more and more.
So, what do you get more men that come to you or women?
Both. It's about 50-50. The difference is that men are incredibly easy to catch. Men are not very inventive. They're usually very easy to catch. Some of the women have been incredibly difficult to uncover. What they do, and a lot of times, the big issue is that women will actually help each other cheat, whereas guys usually go solo. And so if you've got a whole crew helping you create a narrative, like, including social media posts and pictures to show that you're a certain time and place while they're off doing whatever else they're doing, men just don't have have the same know-how. Like, men are far behind. Women are way, way more sophisticated. But it's about 50-50. But the interesting stories are usually involve the women cheating just because they're so good at it.
Is that the number one thing that people come to you for to catch their potential wife or potential husband cheating?
Well, what I'm getting more of is people investigating a potential. Now, on the front end, when it comes to a potential spouse, it's typically the men, their families, or even their business partners that want to find out about the woman that's going to be marrying into the family or the business. And so, give you an example. A very wealthy gentleman. He's worked all his life. His father handed down money. He's going to eventually hand over the reins of the company and their fortune to his son. He had me look into his fiance. They were both in college. They were getting very, very serious. And so he had me look into, I don't know if you want to want me to tell you exactly what occurred, but um, it would be irresponsible for a man to allow someone to marry into his family that could potentially cause disaster and kind of mess up that train they have, with all the money they've acquired and the wealth they've acquired over the years. So the dad, this is without the mom's knowledge. The mother of the son didn't know about this. He wanted to keep her out of it because she was very emotionally attached to the young lady. And so he said, "Look, I want you to look into her." He said, "There's something just not right." So dad had some pretty good instincts, which we found out later. Everything we looked into in her background, everything turned out looked really, really good. When we wound up going, and this is the difference between the prices. When you do a really deep dive, there's a lot of surveillance involved, and so surveillance is where it gets more expensive. And so he said, "Look, I don't care what it costs. I want you to look into her, and we want to, I want to make sure she doesn't have any hidden skeletons in the closet." And so as we've got her under surveillance, she got picked up by an Uber from her place of residence and dropped off to a gentleman's home. And so what we found was the gentleman was a married guy with a family, but his family was on vacation. And we wound up talking to him secretly, on the side. I'm pretty convincing at getting people to talk to me. So I have a pretty good gift of gab. And she was a sugar baby, and but with her sugar baby account, didn't have pictures of her. That's why we couldn't detect that initially. We didn't see her face in the pictures. She just had obscure body pictures. And so when I brought these findings to the dad, he brought in the son. His son didn't know about it. He brought in the son and had me deliver the bad news to the son. and he wound up getting himself out of that situation by, the way they did it was they kind of did it easy. He broke up with her, didn't tell her that he knew about her hidden past, which is probably the best way to do it. And that way there's no drama, there's no histrionics, and
Mhm.
so that's one example. But it's about a man protecting his legacy and
What
protecting his son.
what
Go ahead, sorry.
alerted the dad?
He just thought that her, the way he expressed it to me. He said, "Look, and this is going to sound really bad." He said, "I know a floozy when I see one, and I think she's a floozy." And so and so how he knew that, I don't know. But as a guy who's, I've had a lot of experience with women. You can tell. I've had a lot of experience dealing with women at work and personal wise, and everything. You can tell when a woman has a past where she's been with a lot of men. And the interesting part about this particular story was that she came from a relatively well-to-do family. I wouldn't say they were wealthy, but I would say they were upper middle class. She was going to one of the most expensive colleges in the country, and so in my opinion, she wasn't doing it for the money, and that's been a theme for quite a few of these. She wasn't actually doing it because she needed the money. I think she was just doing it because it was fun.
That was the most surprising thing to me when I started meeting more sex workers was how many came from good two-parent backgrounds and how many did not necessarily need money. Because when you
Yeah.
see it portrayed on TV, it's always an innocent victim who just did it because she had to. And when I was interviewing women, I was perplexed by how many had just really I was the same observation. They did it because for me, it was more OnlyFans women, but they tended to do it because they liked being on camera and doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's look, even me, look, I'm probably one of the most cynical and jaded people you will ever meet in your entire life, just because of the nature of what I do, and I get to see so many dark sides of human nature. But I was actually surprised by that because you think that somebody's just doing it because they're supporting a drug habit, or they need the money, or they were forced into it. But I've met a lot of women, a lot of young women who did it just because um, they yeah, they'll take the money, but they don't need it. They did it because it was exciting. And some of them, I think there are a lot more women who are sex addicted than we actually really will ever know. And it's unfortunate, but well, not really unfortunate. It's a choice they make.
Yeah.
So but at the end of the day, people want to make an informed decision. That's why they come to me, to find these things out. That way, they can say yay or nay based on the truth versus a story they're being told.
Do you think had she stopped, you would have found it out because her pictures were not online?
Um, here's the son was head over heels in love, and he genuinely loved her. And whether it was reciprocated, I have my doubts. My theory is that she was there for the money, for the wealth.
Mhm.
But women are very good at covering their tracks. They're extremely good, especially with men that don't question what they're doing. And so, one trend I see with guys that get cheated on, women probably say that they're controlling or they're insecure. Why? Because a woman might come to themselves, I'm going to girls' night out, and most guys, if they're honest, don't want their wives going to girls' night out. I'm a single guy. I've been the recipient of women going on girls' night out, and so I know exactly what happens on girls' night out, and so does everyone else. But guys have been shamed and gaslighted into silence, and just told that if you have any sort of objection to where she's going or have any inclination to keep her accountable, about who she's hanging out and where she's going, then somehow you're unenlightened, you need counseling or whatever it might be.
What are the most common places that men and women cheat?
What do you mean, like physically where they meet or where they actually go to do the deed?
Ooh, actually both.
Well, believe it or not, even though it's cliche, work is one of the most common places. If like I've dealt with cases of so many people messing with their bosses, women messing with their bosses, women messing with their peers at work, actually on work property, in parking lots. Just I mean, like the most unlikely of places. And cars are a very common place. Cars parked anywhere in a parking garage or even in the street. There was one case where a woman would meet her boyfriend. They'd park their cars one right behind the other, put money in the meter. She'd join him into the SUV. They'd do their thing, and she'd get back in her car and then go back to work. Um, Not so much at people's homes because cheaters tend to mess with other, usually not always, but mess with other married people. So a lot of hotels, motels as
Oh.
well too. Well, if you think about it this way, it's like we used to call back in the Cold War days mutually assured destruction. And so if I'm married and I'm cheating with someone else who's married as well too, then we both have a vested interest in keeping things private because neither one of us, because most of these cheaters don't want to leave their wives or their husbands. They just want something on the side and then go back to their wife or their husband.
What do you find that men and women will accept, and what is a deal breaker? Like, I'm assuming when you look into a woman, I'm assuming more for women, but men too, a woman or a man's past, there's times where the clients walk away, and then there's times where they say, "Okay, that's bad, but I'm still gonna do it." Um, what do you find men and women will accept, and what will they not accept?
Well, there's a huge, um, you know, like it's spread out over across a wide spectrum. So I know of one case. It's actually a friend of mine, very very wealthy guy, very successful guy. He'd been married a few times before, lost a ton of money in divorces. His most recent wife um, allows him to go to one of the ranches in Nevada once a month if he meets certain financial goals. Now the guy makes a ton of money, and so she lets him go do his thing once a month because his he works in the entertainment industry. I'll just say that much, and so he has access to some of the most beautiful women on earth, and he's a powerful guy, and so that changes the dynamic significantly. And so her reckoning is, well, look, he's going to get what he wants to get, but if I can control it and harness it and use that energy towards enriching us, then that's her thing. And so that's on the far end of the one spectrum. On the other side, when a man finds out that a woman has a very promiscuous past, it's situational. If she's been with a lot of guys, he might accept that, but most guys will not accept a woman who has actually done, pay for play. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so, which I don't know philosophically if there's really that much of a difference, but that's just how it is. Women, on the other hand, will accept guys that have a very large body count. They seem to prefer them, and so and I have theories behind that, but they're probably not very popular theories. But women don't have to be good at sex. They don't. I know there are a lot of women that think they are. There are very few that are actually good at sex. Men have to be good at sex to be called good at sex. We have to actually be able to put in work and have to have practiced and learned how to get things done. And so when a woman meets a guy who has a large or a high body count, um, for them, that and I've talked to people. I've actually talked to friends of mine, lady friends of mine, and they've told me, look, you have a better chance of enjoying yourself more than a guy who has not had much experience. And on the flip side, men don't want women who've been with a bunch of guys. Um, women who are sex workers, most of them, if they're honest, and I've talked to several, uh, a lot of them are shut-ins. A lot of them don't go out very often. And I've talked to women that have been in an adult entertainment industry, the film industry, as well as being escorts. And because so many guys have seen them on film, imagine if you're a guy and every person you walk by has seeing your wife getting, or your significant other getting whatever,
Yeah.
smacked by, who knows how many people on film. And there's a lot of women that don't understand why that's not a good thing for a man. But the way I look at it is this: if I'm with a woman, right, that woman now has now become my brand ambassador, not the other way around. And so if she's going to be my brand ambassador, do I want a brand ambassador that has been, in situations that, could potentially hurt my brand and cheapen my brand, as it were. And again, I understand women don't understand it because they're not looking at things from a male perspective. But when you look at the way high net worth individuals or ultra high net worth individuals work, so we're talking about people with a net worth of $20 million or more, they're no longer working for themselves. A lot of these guys are captains of an industry. They've got dozens or hundreds or thousands of people that count on them. Plus the besides to stay productive, but also to put forth a good positive image for the corporation. That's worth gold, especially nowadays with social media. Years ago, you could get away with certain things, but now with internet sleuths being the way they are, there are people who are so good at digging up things. I've actually learned some things about digging up, you know, hidden secrets from some of the internet sleuths. Now, some of these guys get paid to do this, but you can't really hide things anymore like you used to.
Mhm.
Years ago, if a woman wanted to hide things, she could move to a new town. She had a what they called a checkered past. Not that I'm being judgmental, I'm just stating things as they are. But now, because the world is so much smaller, because of the internet, because of all the traces you leave electronically, nothing really goes away from the internet. So all these videos, pictures, everything, they're hidden out there somewhere. And more high net worth individuals. So if you look at it this way, if I'm worth $50 million, and I've had a case recently where an attorney is twice divorced. Both of his wives have really. One of his ex-wives is driving Ferraris and Bentleys, and so this guy is like super wealthy guy, like very very successful guy. Like he's a wizard at making money. And he was dating another woman. She was a single mom, and she had a couple of children, and she moved from one state to the other. He met her at church, and she was born again, and all the rest of that
A
stuff. He went to
single
church
mom
with her.
made it that far? Sorry.
She did, she
I'm
did, and
shocked. Okay, keep going, sorry.
the caveat is this, and part of the reason she made it that far, guys will overlook a lot if a woman is really hot.
Yeah.
And this woman, conservatively, she was a nine and a half.
Okay.
Like she was smoking, like no exaggeration. But he started asking me, he started talking to me about it. He's a friend of mine. And so it wasn't even from the client perspective. He did pay me for it, but and I said, dude, that doesn't sound right. She's got two kids, but she's making you wait. And so he would go date night with her a couple of times a week. And I was like, that doesn't sound right, dude. I said, look, she's got two kids. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, there's no way nobody's smashing that. I was like, somebody's hitting that. And so we made a bet. And I was like, look, if I put her under surveillance and we find out that she's got somebody else, you pay. If not, and I'm wrong, you get it for free. And it didn't take it. The first date night they went out to an expensive dinner. Again, as a wealthy guy, so for him, spending $500, $600, $800 on a night out just for dinner and drinks, that's a drop in the bucket for him. He drops her off. Shortly after that, a lone male approaches her place and spends the night. And so we look him up, and we started looking up more and more information. I hadn't done any background on him, but once we saw this, we looked him up. We saw that he'd been arrested for possession, production of meth, and a few other things. And so I said, okay, let's start looking into her background more. She'd been arrested several times for prostitution and possession. And so, I've done this long enough to where I can look and reverse engineer what people's backgrounds are without even talking to them. And so she was actually a meth whore. And the guy that was the backdoor man, no pun intended, was her baby daddy that she hadn't seen for years, supposedly. And so if he hadn't had a nosy, cynical friend like me who told him to look into this more, he would have gotten married to this woman, who was certainly not being honest with him, was, certainly probably would not have, well, she wasn't loyal to begin with. And so, now you're looking at putting your wealth and your empire, your reputation, your peace of mind in danger. And so, I think people don't take that into account. You marry the wrong person. This goes for men and women. What type of toll does it take if you're married to the wrong person? They make your life a living hell. Not to mention the money. He'd already been beaten up in divorce court twice, and he wasn't really looking forward to it again. But he was still almost willing to accept her, believe it or not. Again, it's the pretty privilege. And so even with all this information, like me and his business partner was like, "You got to be kidding! Like you're joking." And he was like, "Well, she said she's changed and this." I was like, "Okay." I said, "Here's what you do." And me and his business partner is an attorney. He said, "All right, get her to sign a prenuptial agreement and see what she says. If she's not there for the money, she'll sign a prenuptial agreement." And of course, she wouldn't sign it. And so he wound up breaking it off with her eventually. But he still almost went for it, even with that knowledge. And so you'll find that women will, if they find out their guys are cheating, some of them will accept it if the guy is making a ton of money. But men typically won't accept it if they find out their wives are cheating. Not really. It depends on the guy, but most guys want to walk away from it just because it obviously it's a blow to the ego. And there's this misconception out there that all you have to do is be 6'1" and jacked and make a bunch of money and you'll never have a problem with women. You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not true. I've seen guys that, like, literally, there's a guy I work for. He's a professional athlete, and so very tall, obviously on the upper end of the spectrum as far as physical capabilities, right? And so I call people like this Nephilim. Nephilim were the it's a biblical term, but they were the offspring of angels that came down to earth and got married to human females. They were bigger, stronger, and smarter than normal humans. And so guy was an attorney. Well, he had a law degree, but he wasn't working as an attorney. He was an ex-athlete, a former athlete, and the guy stayed in the gym. Like, the guy was built like a superhero. His wife was cheating on him with a guy that was shorter than husband, and just roly-poly dad bod dude. And so and the guy was wealthy, and I'm sitting there like, nah, you know what? There's more to it than that. I think it has a lot to do with if a woman, and this is just from my observation, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but if women have had a lot of guys, they tend to not be satisfied. And I found some of that out talking to some of the sex workers I interviewed. I don't know if you want me to talk about that, but
Yeah, no, go ahead.
okay. Well, some of the cases I worked on, I've actually worked on a ton of for attorneys, a ton of homicide cases from the civil side of things. And so when I say a lot, I've worked over 100 homicides over the past 17 years in Florida. So one of these apartment complexes, I met a witness, and a nice young lady, and we started talking more and more, and I found out that she had been an adult film actress and that she was currently working as an escort. And so I started talking to her, and because I'm an investigator, I'm curious, and I always like to know how things work and how things happen, and how it started and that sort of thing. That's just one of my it's a curse of mine. But the more I talked to her, the more she revealed different things to me, and we had some graphic conversations. And one of the conversations we had was about sex, and I was like, "So, what are your criteria for sex? Does a guy have to be like huge? You know what I mean?" She said, "No, has nothing to do with that." She said, "I need variety." She said, "I have to have different guys to be." She had a boyfriend who knew about her work, and then she would work. She would see 3 to 5 guys a day, 5 days a week. And then she would still go to sex clubs on the weekends. And so she just enjoyed, for her, it was about variety. And I wound up she actually introduced me to several of her friends, some of who were also adult film actresses. And they all worked as escorts as well, too. And I took them all out to a really nice dinner and just let them talk. And so there's this there's been a lot of data put out there saying that having a high body count, or what I call a lot of mileage, has nothing to do. It does not affect a woman's you know later relationships, and they do. They have a profound effect, from the ones I've talked to. And again, now these are on the extreme end of the spectrum as
Right.
far as how many numbers. So please take that caveat. But a lot of them, well, they all said they enjoyed the variety. There were a few guys they actually liked seeing, but a lot of them they didn't. But they loved the variety. They loved having sex with a lot of guys. And again, you go back to the sex work thing. It's really really surprising, just because some of these young women, some of these young ladies came from backgrounds that were actually well to do, and families that had great money. And so they got into it and stayed into it because they wanted to. Some women get into it because they're supporting some sort of some sort of habit, a drug habit typically. But a lot of them, especially more and more, just they're there because they like it. Again, and that was an eye opener for me. So I was somewhat naive when it came to that, and a lot of these things have been an eye opener. There's a lot more hidden sex work that goes on than people realize. So one funny one I think you'll like, um, is a buddy of mine, good pal of mine, known the guy for years. He broke his phone. We were supposed to link up because we both do martial arts at the same place, and he texted me from his girlfriend's phone number and was like, "You're gonna catch a beat down later." And so I'm looking at it, I'm like, "Who the hell is this?" I was like, I didn't know it was him. I was like, "Who the hell is this?" I said, "Okay." So I get a threatening text. I'm a PI, and so I'm gonna look up the number. And so I start running the number, and if you run somebody's phone number and they have an escort ad, the escort ad will pop up. So I'm looking at this, and I see the ad, and I was like, "Wait a second." I was like, wait. And so I read it again, and I was like, "This can't be right, man." And so I had another PI friend of mine look. I said, "Dude, look this up. What do you come up with?" And he was like, and he actually sent me a screenshot of the escort ad. And he was like, "Is that what's his name's girlfriend?" I was like, "I believe so." He's like, "Does he know?" I said, "I don't think so." I don't think so. And so we called him up, and I was like, "Look, dude, you got a problem, man. We need to sit down and talk." And so I called him on her phone and said, "Hey, we need to have a talk." And so he was like, "Okay." So I met him at martial arts. He still had her phone, but she wasn't with him. He was waiting for a new phone. And I was like, "Look, dude, this is what I saw when I ran your girl's phone." And he was like, "What?" Like he was, and this wasn't even a client thing. This was just sheerly just me being a nosy, what. But that's part of my nature. That's part of what I do. And his whole thing was, as he's looking at because a lot of them will list what they'll do. And he's like, she wouldn't do all that stuff for me when I asked her to do it. And I was like,
Was it a current ad or was it a previous ad?
there were several ads, and
Wow.
and they were current. And so the ads went back a couple of years over several, different. There's a ton of places where escorts post ads. And I know a bunch of them just because I used to do searches for missing and exploited kids. I
Mm.
used to volunteer my time as a PI to do that, and so we have to dig deep. And a lot of times, what people will do is they'll put these underage underage girls mostly on these ads, make them look older. But there's certain keywords you can look for, and they'll change their appearance. But we've been able to find some using those and other methods. And so when I looked at it, I was like, man, I was like, dude, so what are you going to do? And that's part of, from an ethical investigator standpoint. You can't just give people information without understanding, without knowing what they're going to do with that information and their state of mind. And so, as an investigator, I can't give someone information if I think they're going to go off the rails and possibly do themselves or someone else harm.
Mhm.
And so, you have to be really careful. Like, even when someone says, "Hey, I want you to find somebody," my first question is always, why do you need to find this individual? And the people who don't want to answer that question, I'm not going to help them. Maybe another investigator would, but I'm not going to do it. And so, because there have been famous cases where stalkers have used investigators to find people and hurt people in the past. So so there was that one. Another one that could have turned out really bad. Um, I don't sleep a whole bunch. I'll sleep 5 hours a night. And I wake up without my alarm clock. And I got a text from a friend of mine. He's a cigar buddy, and so he sent me a screenshot, which made me call. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I called him up. I was like, "What the hell is this?" And it was a screenshot of a friend of ours' daughter on a sugar baby site, and which there's typically nothing illegal about that. It's just that she was 17 years old at the time. And I was like, holy smokes. And I called him up. I was like, dude, you didn't. He said, no, of course not. He said, I just saw it. He was going through one of my, because he's, another guy that's been divorced a couple of times and he goes on the sugar baby sites. And he said, I came across this. And so I texted you. And I was like, well, did you call him? He was like, no. He's like, can you call him? I was like, I want to deliver this news to the guy. And so we agreed that we're both going to tell him. And the dad obviously was heartbroken. And it turned out that she had been on that app for a while, more than a year. And it wasn't just her, it was a bunch of her friends. And so the danger to that, number one, it's underage young lady doing things she, shouldn't be doing. Technically, the kids start pretty early nowadays. But from the man's side, he thinks, he's going on these sites with confidence, thinking that these young women are at least 18 years old.
Oh,
And so, will a judge care if you say you didn't know? Well, I actually knew a guy in California who met a woman at a club. It was a club in Hollywood. I used to live in Hollywood years ago after I got out of the military. And this was a club that the sheriffs would bring the scanning equipment so you can actually scan IDs to make sure the IDs weren't fake. But good fake IDs were actually pretty easy to get back then in LA. I don't know how it is now. And he met this woman, and we all saw her, and she was a knockout. And she did not look underage. And then we used to watch football and everything else. He shows up and he's like, look, I got a problem. I found out that she's 16. And so we were like, holy smokes. And so and because none of us could believe that she was 63 years old. And so he decided to do the right thing, and which I understand. He wanted to break it off with her, and I told him, let her break it up with you. I said, stop showering, stop wiping your butt, do what you got to do. Tell her you don't have any money, let her break up with you. I said, but if you break up with her, he said, she's going to get back at you, and the only way she can get back at you is through the law. And this is exactly what happened. He broke up with her. Um, and she told her parents, daddy, this older man took advantage of me. And he gets arrested. He got perp walked out of his place of business. And even with, he had a good attorney. They hired an investigator. We had statements from her friends saying that she used a fake ID. The bouncer seen her there a bunch of times. Bartenders would serve her drinks because the judge didn't care. He got screwed. And so,
wow.
the judge didn't care. He's like, yeah, okay, well, whatever. And bam, and he wound up getting a couple of years in jail. And so that ruined his life. Like literally, that ruined his life. But technically, was it illegal? Yes. But was he willfully doing this? No, he wasn't.
I would
But the judge didn't care.
I would think the club would be responsible because they let her in.
Well, the parents pushed a punishment for him.
Wow.
Apparently the dad was outraged, and the dad was a very wealthy guy who was pretty well connected, and so this guy didn't stand a chance. And again, there were no consequences for the young lady. There would be no consequences for the underage sugar babies that were doing what they're doing. But if the guy gets caught doing that, he's done.
Yeah.
And so so when we look at different things like this, it's kind of scary sometimes, just because from a guy's perspective, again, it's been men and women. I've worked on a case where a woman thought her husband was cheating, and he was cheating, but he was cheating with a guy, one of his
Oh,
coworkers. Yeah, one of his coworkers, and that was actually a shock. Well, it was, and it wasn't really because look, this happens, but
yeah.
it was a guy who was a married guy with a couple of kids, and the wife stayed with him. And that happens a lot more than you think as well too. Like we all know people who are married, and the man is clearly gay. You know what I mean? And but they're married, they have a wife, a couple of kids already. I've seen that happen in church where there was a music pastor at a church I used to go to years ago. And like when I first met him, I was like, dude, like literally, it's like meeting a skinny Liberace.
Mhm.
Like the guy's hair was always perfect, great piano player, but he just seemed like a gay man. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's 2024. Why do you have to hide this now? I don't think anybody should try to hide this. If that's who you are, be who you are. But so he would open the service with praise and worship. And I don't know if you even want me to go into this. Do you?
No, go ahead. I'm so entertained right now. Keep going.
Okay. All right. All right. I don't want to step past where you
Yeah,
want me to
yeah,
go. This is your
yeah.
show.
No, it's okay.
And so he would open the service with praise and worship. And he was tremendous musician, like one of the best I've ever seen. Tremendous musician. And he would lead. And we thought he would be in his office. He'd be in his office, in prayerful meditation or whatever, right? Praying or whatever, preparing himself for the close of the service. Well, one particular service, he didn't show up. And so the pastor's son, who's also a musician, had to close out with the praise and worship and music they do at the end when they do the altar call and everything. Well, we found out why he didn't show up. He didn't show up because he went to a park in that area. I won't go into the area. Um, and he tried to engage an undercover police officer posing as a gay male prostitute for services. And
Mm.
apparently that's what he would do every week. And then he'd go do what he had to do and then go back to church and finish up the service.
Some of the craziest double lives I've seen are at church. It kind of blackpilled me a little bit because especially I found the worst attitude with church women. Like I would find that the OnlyFans models were like more polite sometimes than like the women that would come on and say they were Christian or whatever. And I would see such a double life when I was interviewing people from some of them. It was just crazy.
Yeah, I was head of security for a very large church for a prominent religious leader. And I can tell you from experience, and anybody, if they're honest, especially these giant churches,
Yeah.
it goes down at the altar call. And whenever there's a huge mash of people mashed in together, I got groped and rubbed against more than at a nightclub. And I got more phone numbers put in my hand and more offers of sex than any place I've ever worked. And that, I'm not even exaggerating. Like the whole double life thing. The whole look, and again, people will get angry at me for saying things, but at the end of the day, I don't say these things out of malice. I'm not angry at anybody. I'm just very matter of fact about things, and I think about things, and I think that people have a right to make an informed decision. If you're being lied to about your potential mate's past, and all the rest of these things, then how can you make an informed decision? You can't. And so when we talk about religion, what I found is that from a straight male's perspective, whenever I meet a woman and she leads with, "I'm a Christian, I go to church, or I'm very religious," I know the clock is ticking, and that if I want to, I can have sexual intimacy with this woman that day. Because they're using it as a shield, and that shield is not to protect her from me. That shield is to protect her from her own lustful desires in past. And so when women have that past, and again, it has never failed. When I meet women that say, "Oh, I'm this, I'm that," okay, I can literally you can literally pull out your pull out your watch and just start the countdown. It won't be difficult if I wanted sexual activity with them. it would be available. And so I think, when you have people go to churches, and it's like that friend of mine who met that woman who was a meth addict, who was a born again Christian. Don't just take that on face value. You still have to investigate people. I'm not saying that they are. Some people really are genuine in
Mhm.
what they're doing, but there are a lot of them that use it as a cover story. And again, like I said before, I'm one of the most jaded and cynical people you'll ever meet. I will never get married again. I've got relationship with women, but I tell them, look, I'll tell them all the time, look, I'm not getting married. So if you're looking for somebody who wants to get married, I'm the wrong guy. And if I feel like they're trying to get too close, they get cycled out, and I bring another one in. Just because I think I'm probably incapable of really trusting anyone that that
Yeah.
that deeply. Look, and again, when you talk about women and the way they cheat, I've worked on cases where literally girls' night out, women would meet at a place. Um, they'd take some selfies. They'd put these selfies on Facebook or whatever it is. Yeah, we're out here. They take a bunch of pictures with the woman. She'd get picked up 10 minutes later and then go off with, Chad or Tyrone or Guillermo or whoever, and then get brought back after, their activity.
Right.
And then they'd go home to their husband who's sitting at home watching the kids.
Right.
you know? I had some really pretentious guys that were real, just some of these guys that are really self-righteous. Oh, I trust my wife. The guys who have been talked into that whole, oh, if you question your wife, you're insecure.
Yeah.
And there's a group of them, about five of them. Out of five of them, four of their wives are screwing around them.
No.
No,
Really?
seriously. Look, here's the thing. If you give, and again, it's going to sound bad, but if you give unfettered freedom with no accountability whatsoever to anybody, male or female, and you give them opportunities, it doesn't matter how unattractive they might be, they will find someone who wants to get with them. And with this particular group, look, these guys that are guys that have their heads up their behinds, and so I don't have any vested interest in helping them. And so, when I split with my ex, they were just so preachy and like, oh well, if you trusted your wife
I
more, this wouldn't have happened.
if
This,
you
that, the other
led
thing.
if you led better,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
always what they
exactly.
say. It's you weren't
Yeah,
godly enough, so
yeah. Well, and I was like, so here's my thing was this: when before I got married, I spoke with my ex, and I said, look, I laid down parameters. People say, oh, you have to. Well, here's the thing: those parameters don't count because of a thing called woman's intuition. Women can just change their mind whenever they want to. And so one of the things I told her, I said, look, I don't want a woman that drinks. I don't want a woman that goes to girls' night out or clubs or bars or this sort of thing. And she agreed. So no, that's not my thing. Um, 4 months into being married, she was like, "Oh, my coworkers invited me to girls' night out." And so then what do you do at that stage? Well, what I said was, I was like, look, I said, you can go to girls' night out, do what you want. I can't stop you. You're a free person. I said, but when you get back, the locks will be changed and your stuff will be outside. I said, so, and I had to draw a hard line in the sand. And if you're not willing to do that, you will get walked all over. And I saw so many guys, most of the guys I've done work for, they've done that whole thing where they just trusted and just believed. And it's really silly because we've all seen women how they behave on girls' night out. Like every single guy has seen it and wanted to infiltrate that group of the really slutty looking women,
yeah, yeah.
all together dancing with each other. And this whole, oh, we dress this way for our friends. No, you're not. No, you're not. It's just like women at the church who have all the boobs and everything else hanging out the way. Like, okay, sister, you're not dressing that way for Jesus. I'm sorry. And again, anybody who's honest, if people are honest, they'll tell you that it goes down at church, man.
Yeah.
Like the hookup culture at church is real. And I don't say that from a standpoint of gloating because I grew up in church. And so I am a Christian. I tell people I'm not a very good one, but I'm a Christian. My grandmother was a preacher. She preached for 62 years until she couldn't stand in the pulpit anymore. But unlike a lot of modern churches, she never took a paycheck. She was a registered nurse. She never took a paycheck from church. While I was the grandson, I got into a fight at church twice in the middle of the church service. So I was that troublemaking grandson. And but today the church is it's not what it used to be, man. It's not what it used to be. The older ladies used to keep the young ladies in check. The older men used to keep the young men in check. Now it's a free for all, and guys are being pressured into marrying women that if they knew their pasts, or if they understood that their past weren't washed away because they answered the altar call, and it doesn't mean that necessarily going forward that they've actually changed their ways.
So you mentioned that it's going to be more difficult for people to live a double life.
Yeah.
What are ways that you are able to detect high body count in women? Because I've heard men say there's no point in worrying about it because you'll never know. So
I,
what are I know there's like things, single mother, obviously, like there's generalities that people make, but how would someone specifically know?
well, there's a couple of ways. I can tell just because I've been with a lot of women. If you've been with a lot of women, you can tell when a woman
Yeah.
has had a lot of men. You just can. You can see it on their face and their demeanor. You can. But from a more practical standpoint, women who have a high body count tend to congregate together. Okay, so if you have a woman and if you know a woman and she hangs out with a couple of women that are really slutty, she's not the one that's trying to lead them down the path of righteousness.
Okay.
No, she isn't. She isn't. And so just like this whole thing with if she's got a heavy drug past, a heavy drinker, women that go to bars a lot. Nobody does these things because they're not trying to hook up with somebody else. These are places where people hook up. And you look at other things like women that travel a lot, women that travel for work. I had a case not too long ago where, um, a guy thought his wife might have been messing around on him. And so he wanted to just check. And she was a traveling salesman and she'd be gone 3, 4, sometimes 5 days out of the week. And she would travel with a bunch of other men. Yeah, she was messing around with her boss. If a woman works at a place with a lot of salesmen, forget it. It's a wrap. Salesmen are particularly adept at talking. They got game
Yeah.
for a reason. They're
Yeah.
salesmen, and so certain professions, nurses tend to be tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
Now they'll have a guy that they'll set up in the boyfriend or husband or future long term mate zone, and it's funny because women will put guys in different categories, and no guy wants to be in the category where you're not getting it. Everybody wants to be in the category when where you're the guy who's getting everything from a woman. But they'll decide, okay, I want this guy to be my boyfriend, so he gets nothing. This dude I met, the scumbag in the bar, that's the guy who's going to get everything, and
Yeah.
unrestrained sex. And so you look at different tendencies. Look at there's a lot to do with social media. A lot of women have more than one social media account. You might see one where they friend you, but they'll have others. And women will use different social media accounts for a couple of different reasons. They'll use a social media account to gather intelligence on you. Like I said, I call it the estrogen network. The estrogen network is women and the way they understand how to gather intelligence and information better than men do. And so and I've had women do this with me. They'll send me a friend request on, say, Facebook or Instagram or wherever it is, and I'll look at it, and I know I have a very practiced eye. I'm like, oh, this is not their real account. And so I'll do some more digging and find their actual account, which will be on a different email or whatever it might be. But women will have different email addresses that you don't know about. They'll have Women are using burner phones. Like we've had cases where women actually had separate phones, so things won't show up on the phone network. Women have used what's called a digital dead drop to communicate with the guy they're messing with.
A
That's
digital what?
when
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
digital dead drop. So a dead drop is, and excuse my terminology. I was trained years ago by an old cold warrior, and so um, some of the terminology is kind of the old intel stuff. So a dead drop is a place where an operative would place information like years ago as a microfilm or whatever, a secret note with a formula, who knows what, right? And they would hide it somewhere, and it would be marked so that the person that was following up and needed that information they wanted to give it to would be able to pick it up surreptitiously without being detected. So these days with electronics, the main way people get caught typically is with these, right? Your cell phone.
Yeah.
Your cell phone tells on you. It tells everything on you. It's always listening. It's always watching. Nobody leaves their cell phone behind. To get around that, what this woman was doing, and this was in a actually in a famous case with, I think it was General Petraeus, when he got caught because he was having an affair. And so if you have access to the email address, and I have access to the same email address, I'll place in the drafts a message I want you to see, and it never gets sent. You know what I mean? And so all you have to do is log on, look in the drafts, the most recent one. That's the message. Meet me at the No-Tell Motel.
Oh.
And that's how they were communicating. They weren't using the phone. And the only reason we found that was because we wound up getting access to the computers and everything else, and so because of the spouse, and because people want to know why, people want to know how, and so we've gotten really good at reverse engineering, understanding how people communicate. But women with high body counts tend to be the ones that cheat the most, unfortunately. The problem with that is this. I actually know a young woman now, 20 years old. She's got a triple digit body count at 20. And she started sexual activity when she was 12 years old. And that happens a lot more often than you think. One of my neighbors knocked on my door one night. Apparently, their daughter had snuck out of the house and went to a party and came back. Her underwear was missing and that sort of thing. And I was like, you need to go get a rape kit right away. You know, and so that happens a lot more often than people think. Just people just aren't really monitoring what their kids do very
Mm.
often. And so you have women with, young women. This young woman was not a sex worker. She just had a lot of sexual partners at 20 years old. And so, if you don't have a lot of experience with women, you're not going to do very well with this young woman. Just because she's so advanced sexually that most men, there's a lot of guys that they go into their 20s, never had sex before, which it happens to the guys. But if you're in that situation, look, I feel bad for those guys, because they're put down a lot, they're vilified, they're teased a bunch, they're clowned a whole bunch. But if they could change that, they would. I'm sure they don't want to be in that situation, but this is the world we live in. And so women will marry for money. They won't really marry a guy that they're really attracted to. I found that a bunch as well too. Most of the women I've talked to that got married and maybe divorced later on, they said, "Look, I didn't even love my husband when I married." Like, you'd be surprised how many women say that I didn't even love my husband, but I married him anyway because he'd be a good provider or a good father or whatever it might be. And so and so when we talk about deception, you have guys that are getting married that have the belief that their wife loves them. And so this is why you get so many sexless marriages, or sex with so many conditions applied to sex. Okay, well, if you want sex, you've got to do this, 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 and this, and maybe I'll throw you some. You know what I mean? Maybe. And so when and so when people have this ridiculous notion that if you take care of this and you hold masculine frame, this or that, it's a bunch of nonsense. But like I said, I've seen guys that were studs literally studs, like giants, like the 6'7", 6'8", jack, stay in the gym and rich. And these guys got cheated on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's about accountability. It's about understanding human nature. If you understand women, you understand that a woman who has a lot of bodies to her name. And again, it's not to put them down or to shame them. This is, I'm just speaking fact. She's gonna have less. She's gonna be less likely to be satisfied with one mate.
Mhm.
And so one guy's typically not going to do it for. And again, I had some eye-opening conversations with some of the sex workers I talked with. Um, there are, people say there's no physical, that there are no physical consequences. And some of them, I've actually brought that up to some of them. Some of them just said, look, they don't really have a whole bunch of feelings, some of them,
Mhm.
inside, because they've had so many guys in there. And I do think, at some point we think of, like a man, men don't have that problem. We don't really lose sensitivity unless you're just doing just some weirdo stuff or whatever. But you don't. And so, when you talk to women, when you hear women encouraging other women to just go and mess around and just have sex with as many guys as you want and all the rest of this stuff, it's like, look, there are consequences to it.
And
So go ahead.
and I'd imagine they'd had to have caught a bunch of stuff sleeping with that many guys. Like, I wonder what percent have something incurable.
I actually had a case where, and again, with these stories, just so you know, just put a caveat out there. I do change these stories up some, just because I need
Yeah.
to protect people in their identity. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And obviously,
Yeah.
I'm never going to put anybody's name out and that sort of thing.
Mm.
But there was a guy, there was a woman who gave her husband an STD. She got the STD from her pastor,
Wow.
who got it from another woman in the church. And so STDs occur quite a bit. There was one woman that told her husband that, oh, well, in certain cases, this, the STD can lie dormant in a woman's body. It can incubate for a while, but she was saying it was years before, and it's just laying in wait like a trapdoor spider until that one day to reach out and grab him. And it's like, it's like, no, no, sorry, you know,
So she
and
said she
so
had a STD that was dormant for years?
yeah, yeah, they were married for
What
years.
was it?
I don't. It wasn't HPV, although that's a very dangerous one.
Mhm.
Um, I think she was saying it was gonorrhea or might have been chlamydia.
And that it
Um,
lies
and
dormant for okay, come on. Like
like yeah, exactly. And when he told me that, I just looked at him like, really, really, man. I said, you don't really believe it.
Yeah.
He was like, what do you? And so and people have this thing where they want to believe the lie. And so, and again, one of the things I ask people is, look, do you really want to know this? Is this something you really want to know? Would you want to keep going forward in ignorance? And some people don't want to know. And so again, human nature being what it is, um, I understand that most people can only be trusted conditionally.
Yeah.
There's only two people on this earth that I trust completely. One of them recently passed away, is my father. The other one is my son. Outside of that, I'm not a trusting person. And again, I'm very jaded because of the work I've done. But I've seen too much of female nature, not just from the investigative side, but I've also done a lot of executive protection work for very wealthy, powerful guys, from politicians. Remember, I'll tell a story one day about how I wound up in a political campaign ad, actually. And I've worked for people that ran studios out on the West Coast, and the lengths that women will go to link up with powerful guys is incredible. Like one of the guys that he was dating one of my neighbors. He was one of Jerry Buss's kids, and so he would tell us stories about how they would have to hire investigators to protect the players, because women would do things like they would bribe concierges, they would get jobs for companies that service different areas or maid services just so they can get with these guys. They would sabotage condoms, the whole spurglary thing. That's a whole other thing that wealthy guys have to worry about. So people look at wealthy guys and they think they got it easy. Their problems are different. They don't really have it easy though. They're under constant assault, like constant, and it was never ending. And we would be right there front and center to see everything go down. And these would be married married women. And I think to a certain degree, some people, men and women, have kind of malleable morals when it comes to certain things. And so I'll give you an example. I was on I organized a protection detail, a bunch of guys in suits, armed to the teeth, for an opening of a certain organization. I can't go into the name of it,
Mm.
obviously. And so I had about 9, 10 guys there in suits. And so I would go from inside to outside. And just to get into this party, um, this really pretty trophy wife offered to service me in my car to let her in. And you can see the giant rock on her finger. She just wanted to be in that party. And I'm sitting there looking at her. And at first I was like, no, no, I can't do this. But there's things like that. And if from my perspective, my standpoint is this: I have a code. There's some things I just won't do, and one thing I'm never going to do is I never harm clients, and I don't put clients in bad situations. And so obviously I turned that down. But if you're the bodyguard, you see everything that happens. You see everything that goes down. Why? Because you're there for everything. And so women, and I say women not to target women. People will say, "Oh, you hate women." I don't hate women. I've actually done a lot to try to help and protect women over the years, and volunteered to do it. Um, and but most of the wealthy people I've worked for were men. I've only worked for one wealthy woman, and she was really, really rich. But these guys are under attack, literally. Like it's almost like they've gotten their tactics from an intelligence organization trying to infiltrate a network. They're that slick and that polished and that determined, and they just don't stop. And so whenever I hear about wealthy, powerful guys getting caught cheating, um, I have a little bit more understanding because I know what these guys are up against. I had a roommate that was an actor. He was a soap opera guy. This is when I lived in Los Angeles. And like we'd go to these groupie bars, and these women would just literally, they would just follow you into the bathroom and offer themselves to you. Like it was literally that much. And I actually had to stop being his roommate because he'd go to parties and bring 3 or 4 girls home, and women would just crawl into bed with me. And okay, I mean that was cool for a while, but I was working. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually had work to do. I mean, I would turn the lights and check and make sure he didn't try to slip an unattractive woman in. I mean, but it's that much is available to guys that are famous, to guys that are wealthy, to athletes. They're under constant assault, and so I have a little bit more understanding from what they from what they go through. But the double life thing, it's harder and harder to hide because guys like me are becoming more and more adept at reverse engineering. And people can cover their tracks to a certain extent, but there's only so much they can cover. And so we've developed some pretty good systems, and SOPs, standard operating procedures, to be able to unravel. Even when people are trying to hide things, we're really good at finding things. Most people have something to hide. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It's like I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's, well, I don't have anything to hide. I said, okay, let me look at your browser history. Silence. Yeah, of course. Everybody has something to hide. It doesn't mean that you're breaking the law.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But when it comes to understanding who your spouse is, you know, the best indicator we have for somebody's future is their past. And that is held true. That's why people have resumes and bios and things of that nature. People want to see where you've been and what you've done and what your tendencies are. That's why credit card companies look at your past.
So, what would you say are green flags for women? So, if you were advising a client, um, like what types of women maybe passed your tests or like didn't fall? Did you see any patterns?
Yes. And so the way the women behave towards them, and I'll use a friend of mine, a lady friend of mine, as an example. Um, and any woman I go out with, I'm going to vet them, and they know that. You're
Yeah,
probably going to be a
yeah.
terrific type helper. But look, you know what? I'm a PI. I'm going to look into your background. Doesn't mean that I'm going to disqualify you, but I want to know. You
Mhm.
know, I'd rather know than not know. Um, but I've got a couple of female friends. I got a few female friends, but in particular, one in particular has distinguished herself from the others because whenever I have any sort of issue, she makes herself available. You know, whereas my ex, she almost seemed to take delight in challenges I had to go through. So it's almost like she was rooting for my opposition. Next is, what is her relationship with her family? Does she have a close relationship with her family, not just her brothers and sisters, but her mom and her, especially her dad? And what type of dad is he? And so if you understand or meet a woman's father, and he's what I would consider an upstanding, upright, righteous dude, meaning a guy that's not a drunkard, a guy that has good self control, a guy that takes care of and looks after his offspring. That's a good sign. You know what I mean? So if if a woman can date a guy and get engaged to a guy, like I've seen this where a woman can do all these things with a guy and live with a guy, and the guy never met her father. That for me is a big red flag, just because having a dad, and this goes for men and women, having a dad guiding you, and so this is not to discount mothers or their the part they play. That's also a very important part, but it's a different role. I know people think women can fill the same role as men. They cannot. Just like I can't be a mother can't be a father. And I'm sure I'll catch heat for that, but whatever. And so the father's role is to guide and teach. Like my son is 18 years old. Whenever he has an important decision to make, he'll come to me. Why? Because he knows I will always have his best interest at heart. Why? Whatever I have, he's going to inherit going forward into the future, and hopefully he can carry my DNA into the future. But the same thing with your daughter. And so, if you have a daughter and you want the best of her, and you've raised her to to not just understand who you are, but value your input, that's a really good indicator. And so, like this woman, people will call her a pick me. And again, I made a post. I was like, isn't it? It's not a coincidence that women you call pick me's are constantly being picked. And so, when I started going out with her, I met her sister and her brother-in-law within about a month, and then I met her dad like a couple of weeks after that, and her mom a couple of weeks after that. Nice people, great people. If I ever need anything, like if she's coming over to my house, oh, can I pick anything up? You know, and she's she puts herself in position to where she doesn't interfere with my business, but she's always there to help me if I need it. Same thing I see with some of these other guys. And I look, well, how does she treat you? What does she do? But the women that just want you to do for them. Uh, if you're a guy and you go with a woman that's just like, gimme, 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 do this for me, do that for me, um, that's a woman you should stay away from, because she's clearly just there for the money. But if you're okay with that, that's fine. But what I've told guys to do is, and I had maybe I'll make a post about this one day, but a guy who was wealthy and he met a young woman on a dating app, which those things are useless, but he's got a unique perspective on things. And here's what it is. He's a wealthy guy. He's got a ton of property, but he lives in a one-bedroom apartment. He lives in a one-bedroom condo apartment. He met her, brings her over there, and I was like, look, dude, don't show her. Don't let her see how much money you have. He drives a car that's paid off. He's not a flashy guy at all. And his father told him to be that way. Don't let anybody see how much money you have. And he dated this woman for a while. She never tried to put any conditions on him for what she wanted and how she wanted to be treated. Like you hear these stories about women talking about, I have pre and post date expenses and all the rest of this stuff. If you're a dude and you pay that stuff, you're a chump, and I don't feel sorry for you. If a woman comes at you like that, like, look, I I typically don't take anybody anywhere. I'm not buying anyone anything. I'm just not doing it. Now with this one, with the ones that distinguish themselves, different story. You know what I mean? The ones that have distinguished themselves, different story, but they got to prove themselves to me first. And if they can't do that, then they get, you know, they can keep moving. And if more guys held on to that, now I get it. If a guy has a hard time meeting women, he may not be, as dismissive. I'm very dismissive unless I get to know somebody, and I'll walk away from a woman immediately. But guys that aren't meeting women, they may accept behaviors like that. And what I would say to those guys is you need to discipline yourself and you need to hold the line and not put up with outrageous things like that. I've had women that I've met, I've never taken them anywhere. I've never bought them anything, and they've given themselves to me 100%. If a woman really wants you, you don't have to jump through any hoops. You will not have to jump through a single hoop. If they want you, they'll give it to you right away. And so, yes, work on yourself. But I would also say that the big difference between men and women is men understand when a woman is out of their price range. And so, what I mean price range is sexual market value.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm a three, but I want to get with this chick and she's a 10, even if I'm rich, I know she'll get with me, but it's going to be just for the money. It's not going to be because she actually wants to get together with me. And so I'm going to have to jump through all types of hoops. And if you got to jump through hoops to get a woman to go out with you, don't go out with that woman. Go out with the woman that wants to go out with you. Go out with the woman that wants to make your life better and be a partner with you. Don't go out with a woman that is one of these divas that just thinks that somehow because they have a vagina, they just deserve whatever they ask for. There's a lot of vaginas everywhere. Vagina is not a scarce commodity. It's very, very common, and more of it is available today than has ever been in the history of mankind. Why are you guys jumping through hoops for vagina? They should be jumping through hoops for you. That's how it should be. But too many guys will fall into this trap where they'll let themselves be drawn into this. Okay, if I do this one more thing for her, then maybe. Here's the thing, guys. Women like that will never show gratitude. And I think that that's one of the mistakes a lot of guys make. They're expecting gratitude. Some women will show gratitude, not these. These won't show gratitude. They'll just expect you to give them things for no reason. They don't really want you. They just want the things you can supply to them. Now, here's what I will say: once women show that they are willing to be on your team, like the pick me I mentioned earlier, um, you know, do I take her out to dinner? Yes, yes, she's proven herself. Matter of fact, she's coming over tonight. She lives in, obviously she doesn't live too far away, but she's also entitled to my protection, which is significant. You know what I mean? She knows she'll be safe here. That's also what she's entitled to. She's entitled to, when I go out somewhere, if I have a black tie event or something like that where I need to wear a tuxedo or something like that, guess what? Guess who's getting the call? The number one on my list. I got a list of girls, but she's number one. So guess what? She's the one who gets the call. And so that's what pick me's are entitled to. But pick me's are just women that understand that, everybody's a pick me to a certain extent. If you're in a business, you're a pick me. You want people to pick your business. So I don't understand why this is such a matter of pride for some women to be contentious and mean and call other women pick me's because they go through and make the efforts to they take care of themselves like this the women I go out with, they take care of their hair, their nails, but not just that, they stay in the gym. You know what I mean? They keep their weight to a certain level, and they understand that it's a buyer's market. People flip the script. It's not a seller's market anymore. Maybe years ago it might have been a seller's market. It's a buyer's market, and there's more in the market available than there has ever been. And so, when we're talking about a commodity, if there is an overabundance of eggs, well, guess what? Price of eggs is going to go down. If there are fewer eggs, the price of eggs is going to go up. It's the same thing. Women are not a scarce resource. Stop treating them that way, guys. And I think women should stop acting like they're a scarce resource, like they've cornered the market on. Like my ex tried this with me. I went from getting laid all the time to getting married and getting rationed. And I had a problem with that. And that's ultimately part of the reason our marriage fell apart. Because initially you will do whatever you can and jump through all the hoops because it's the right thing to do, right? And so eventually here's what happens. Resentment will set in. And this is for all the women that use sex this way and withhold sex to get what they want. I call it weaponized vagina. All right. So what's going to, I know I have a lot of bunch of different sayings, but the weaponized vagina is, well, do this for me or you're not going to get it. Do that or you're not going to get it. Or if you say something I don't like, you're not going to get it. And so it's always held over your head like this sort of Damocles. Here's what happens eventually. Your man is going outside and he's going outside with an erection. And every set of pouty breasts and perfectly shaped legs and buttocks and feet and pouty lips and all the women that are flirting with your husband, when they are, he's going to start noticing them more and more and more. And he's going to have resentment. It's like, wait a second, man. I got married. And again, I made a post about this and people just got angry and so sad about what I said. But at the end of the day, most men get married because one of the reasons is continuous access to sex. And that's not me being mean or saying that women are or whores or anything like that. That's an honest statement. You know, if guys are honest, they'll say that. But women got angry and say, "Oh, you just categorize women." It's like, no, that's not what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, that's the truth. And so if you're withholding that one thing that they really really want, well, guess what? At some point they're going to be like, wait a second, man, why am I going through all this stuff for this one piece of a JJ?
Well,
It's everywhere.
what guy would get married if he knew sex wasn't on the table? No man.
Well, nobody knows that though.
Yeah. I mean, come
But
on.
because it's like, okay, and again, I made this post, and again, people got so mad about this, man.
Yeah.
And so I drew a comparison. I said, okay, sex. Somebody asked me if sex with marriage, what the comparison was, and I actually had a guy ask me. I said, okay, before sex, um, even engagement, it's like Walmart. It's open 24 hours. You can get pretty much whatever you want. After marriage, turns into Publix. Can't get as much, and the hours have been restricted somewhat, but still manageable, right? After childbirth, it turns into an appointment-only boutique that only sells one or two items, and if you miss your window of opportunity, you've got to wait until the store decides to open again. That's sex with marriage in most cases. And women got so angry, like they got really angry. Well, women, and some of them were almost actually saying that men shouldn't expect sex when they get married. Then why get married? And so my wife, my ex knew that I'm not a scrub. I got women whenever I wanted. And she knew that beforehand. You know what I mean? And then I got throttled back. And after a while, I was like, yeah, you know what? You can keep your vagina. I don't need it.
Yeah.
You,
How
you know, you can keep it.
how do men distinguish a woman making him wait for sex because she's um like prudish or inexperienced and a woman that's doing it to control him?
Um, Here's what I would say. They're giving it to somebody. Women like sex just as much as men do. They'll hold it back from you while giving it to someone else. Somebody else is getting it if you're not getting it. So there are no more. The amount of women that are being prudish nowadays, that number is so small as to statistically it's zero. They all have somebody somewhere, and what they'll do is they'll hold it back, and so it's used as a tool. So they hold back to create a false sense of market inflation, I guess you could call it. Right. So if I haven't had any for a while, there's this woman I'm hanging out with, and I just really want some, and just my level of desire for this lady is way up to here. Well, that gives her an advantage, gives her a psychological advantage because I'm not thinking clearly. Because because the lower head is taking over more and more and more as this desire increases. Hers is not increasing because she's getting to exercise those demons on the side with whoever the dude is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it does happen. Doesn't happen very often though. Like I said, I've worked on cases where women were holding it back from men, and they had somebody else on the side. There's always somebody else, always. Men don't always have that. They'll have a woman that they're pursuing, and depending on the guy's level of proficiency with women, he may not have another woman on the side. He's putting all of his hopes in this one. Women never put their hopes in one basket. They always have several baskets that they're juggling at the same time and keeping in reserve, I guess you could call it. And so, when women are withholding, it is a method of exerting control. And so, if your trigger is, if they create that trigger where you're constantly chasing physical intimacy with this woman, even after marriage, um, that's constantly going to be the methodology she's going to use to control you. Now, men can counteract that by saying, okay, if you want to withhold, then maybe we shouldn't date anymore. Let's see other people, and just do that and walk away. And if she says walk away, okay, fine, okay, then you dodge the bullet. But too many guys are afraid of calling women on the carpet and saying, look, this is, like, this is how things are. Like, I've met women and said, look, man, if I've talked to women and said, they've said, I don't have sex on the first date, or I want to wait, or it's going to take this many dates. I was like, all right, well, good to meet you. Bye. And I've gotten them to U-turn. I'm like, look, man, I don't need you. I can replace you. And so, I had one. Sometimes I can be kind of a prick. Anybody who works for me can tell you I'm a horrible person to work for, because I place a lot of demands on people. But I picked a woman up, and she looked fantastic. We were going to go to an event, and she was so rude and so just almost dismissive. I literally turned around in the car, and while she was in the car, I called her replacement. And I was like, hey, how soon can you be ready to go out to dinner? Oh, I can be ready shortly. Okay. And dropped her off, and just pushed her to the side. And if guys are more willing to walk away from women, even the hot ones, especially the hot ones especially will give you more respect because they're used to everyone kissing their asses. If you're a dude who's willing to kiss a woman's behind because she's very pretty or super hot, and there are some women that are super hot. Everybody's got their own criteria. I've got a very strict set of criteria, but it's when they understand that, like, someone will tell you some guys aren't going to wait. You don't make some guys wait. And if you're a guy who is willing to wait and is willing to do all these things, you're going to be trying to ice skate uphill. And your life is going to be a lot more difficult. Walk away from it. Walk away from it. If you're a guy who's just focused and doing his thing, you'll meet the woman who's going to be what you need her to be. And there are too many guys that are trying to fit into a woman's life. I'm not trying to fit in anybody's life. My life is my life. My life is pretty well established. If you want to be part of it, you gotta audition. You want to be part of the team, you can be part of the team, but you've got to be a team player. And you have to understand that I'm the captain of the team. And guess what? There are rewards for that. And so when I tell guys, when if a woman's willing to do that, then yeah, you need to do something for them as well too. Go out to dinner. When, like I said, black tie events, I've got a client that's got the special exclusive tickets to the Kia Center where the Magic play and all the rest of that stuff. Sometimes he'll let me use his luxury box. And guess what? If I have the luxury box, guess what? She'll get the call. She'll get the call. Why? Because that's what I'm willing to do for her for everything she's willing to do for me. And so it's not just a take from my part. There's a give and take, but let them prove themselves first. But too many guys have been programmed into thinking that they need to jump through hoops, and treat women. Some of them, they probably treat some women better than they really should, right from the very beginning, without any sort of give and take. And if you're just willing to give, why should they give you anything back? If you're willing to let them dictate the terms, stop letting people dictate the terms to you. A guy should not be letting women dictate terms. You dictate the terms.
The guys in the chat, they wanna know how much your services cost.
Well, look, just look me up. Um, can I say some of my contact?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Um, Anderson Security Consulting at Gmail, not at, well, at gmail.com, but also Russell at andersonsecurityconsulting.com. Look me up on X at look up Private Investigator Russ. Um, also got an Instagram, Private Investigator Russ. On Facebook, it's Anderson Security Consulting at gmail.com. So the name of my company is Anderson Security Consulting. The website is being updated. The guy who does my web, does all my web stuff. He's going through an illness right now, so he's a little bit slow. And so so keep him in your prayers. His name is Ricardo. He's facing terminal brain cancer, and so just pray for him. Good guy, but that's what he's facing. You know, and he won't mind me asking for prayers for him. But yeah, so yeah, reach out to me. Again, everybody's not going to be able to afford the really, really deep backgrounds. But if you're going to get married and you're a man, people have this thing where, a lot of guys don't do research at all. Women will research a man. Like they'll go really, really deep in research men. They'll utilize the aforementioned estrogen network, and they'll put their heads together and they'll have a council and an advisory group. Like they're really sophisticated. Men will just be like, all right, let me just YOLO. You know what I mean? And it's really the wrong thing to do. And it's not just for old money, super wealthy, you know what I mean? One percenters. Yes, those guys do. More and more they're doing it. The smart ones are. But guys who don't have that, you don't know where you're going to be 10 years from now. Right now you might be making 60 grand a year. 10 years from now, you might be making $5 million a year or more. Who knows? So if you make a small investment in the very beginning, and again, that's not a guarantee for anything, but it gives you very good impression of what you can look forward to in the future. All right. So, and again, I know a lot of wealthy guys. Most of them knew these women for years before they got married, like years and years and years. The average wait time for marriage is not that long. It's less than a year for a lot of people. And so people are meeting women, and women are very, very good at hiding what they are if they really want you. They'll put up the act for a good while, but they can't keep it up forever. But an ounce of prevention instead of a pound, instead of a pound of cure later. Um, Bite the bullet, do what you need to do, vet the women that are going to be in your lives, and then maybe if you do make a decision to go forward, at least you have the ability to make an informed decision based on factual information versus just, okay, let me just do it. Because most guys are pressured into marriage. Most guys aren't choosing to propose. Some are, but most of the time guys are browbeaten or pressured. Well, if you don't put a ring on my finger, that type of thing. And so they're okay. Well, yeah, let me just go ahead and propose, and the bended knee and all the rest of the stuff. I didn't do the bended knee thing, bro. I just thought that was I didn't do it. She even complained about it, and I was like, look, I'm not getting on my knees for anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm just not doing it. So it was, and again, I'm not immune to making mistakes. It wasn't a mistake to get married because my son came out of it. And in my opinion, he's the best human being on the face of the earth that's ever walked the face of the earth. And that's just me. I'm biased because he's my son. And I raised him. And he's gotten a steady diet of all the things I've helped clients with over the years. And he is so sharp. He was telling me about a young lady he was talking to. I said, what happened to that one girl you went out with? He said, no. He said, and this was when he was like 16 years old. I said, what happened to her? Too many red flags. At 16. he's 18 now. So he's really, really, he's gotten a steady education that a lot of guys don't give their sons nowadays. Men need to be teaching their sons how to deal, not just how to make money and how to balance your checkbook and how to invest, but one of the most important investments and decisions in your life is who you're going to marry. So you need to understand their background. You need to understand what type of human being you're actually dealing with, not just the oh, she's good, she's cool with me. I know a guy who married a woman just because she had large boobs. That was it. And I was like, and she was an exotic dancer, and he was shocked when he found out that she was having sex with everybody but him. And I was like, dude, everybody, of course she was cheating on you. And I I can when I'm talking to guys, I can tell. And there are guys I've even told you don't need an investigator. Like you already know everything you need to know. And I've told you, look, you don't need to hire me. Um, you know, uh, you know everything you need to know already to make a decision. And sometimes people just want confirmation.
Mhm.
But typically, when people come to me, whether it's male or female, um, have they been wrong? Yes, there have been instances when they've been wrong. So it's not an exact science, but you know, I don't I don't think enough men look into the backgrounds of the women they're with, and if they did, they would probably run for the hills. And again, I will catch hell from women for this because they seem to be ones who women and guys who are just the male feminists, which I have a theory about male feminists. They're the creepiest, the weirdest guys on the face of the earth that women should actually probably avoid. But because I can't be a feminist, how can I be a feminist? I'm not a woman. How can I actually understand women's issues?
Mhm.
I'm not a woman. Just like you can't, most women can't. You have a pretty good understanding, Pearl, but your perspective is different. I think a lot of it has to do with that you've done a lot of research and a ton of work, and I think you've interviewed what hundreds or thousands of people over the years.
Thousands of women have black pilled me.
Yeah, well,
I'm as cynical as you,
yeah,
to be honest.
yeah, it's look, like I said, I trust only to a certain extent just because I've just seen so many things, but because of your
Yeah.
background and because of your interviews, you have an understanding. Most women get their information about men from other women who give them the most backwards and self-destructive advice I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Like I've heard women tell other women, "Oh, your 20s are to have fun, hook up with and link up with as many guys as you want, and then, when you turn 30, get serious." Well, from a practical standpoint, look, women enjoy sex as much as men do, and so I get it. You know what I mean? I get wanting to have a lot of whatever, right? But from a woman's perspective, if you look at what men want from women. I've heard you say this before, and you've caught a bunch of heat for it. Um, Women have a very small window of opportunity to maximize their gains. They have a very, very small window of opportunity. Now, during that small window of opportunity, they can run the table and run and rule the world, based on a bunch of different factors. But if a woman is a 9 or a 10, she can call her shot. She can literally call her shot. But if she's a 9 or 10 and then she hits 35, she's no longer going to be looked at the same way. And there's nothing sadder than seeing women that used to be really hot still thinking they're really hot.
Oh, it's
And you see
so
them,
oh, oh,
it's difficult to look at. It's difficult to look at, man. And again, this is not from any, I'm not being mean, but like I saw a woman today, um, and I won't say where exactly because it's in my neighborhood,
yeah.
but she's a woman that I knew her 15 years ago. 15 years ago, she was an absolute smoke show, like literally. But she did just date this guy, that guy, and she dated a lot of wealthy actors and athletes and that sort of thing. And now she's 15 years older, and she's not getting anywhere near the same attention she got before. And she's got a couple of children as well too.
Do you see men vetting for genetic fraud, like plastic surgery? Do you see them looking
No,
for that? Oh, no?
no, they don't. No, guys, and again, I'm glad you brought up the genetics. I've actually advised a couple of women about how to meet and land and treat wealthy guys. I've actually had a couple of women I know actually come to me and ask me for for advice. I've worked for a few billionaires, a lot of millionaires, and they have certain things in common that they're looking for in women. And so when I was talking to one young lady in particular, And I said, do you know why you're pretty? A lot of people don't understand what actual beauty is. Beauty is not your hair, your nails, this ridiculous contouring makeup,
Mhm.
all made to mask and hide genetic deficiencies, which that's what they do, right?
Mhm.
The cosmetic surgeries, the lips, the nose, the hips, the all the stuff people get, the liposuctions, the fake this and fake that. I said, what makes you pretty is your bone structure. You cannot fake bone structure, not real bone structure. You can do some masking to it, but a lot of guys do not. And so if you look at some women who've had a lot of surgery, like look at, not to call her out, look at Tommy Lahren before and after. She had a lot of plastic surgery. She looks like a completely different person.
Mhm.
Like it looks like a completely different human being. Um, Having lived in Hollywood, I had roommates that would get nose jobs. That was a big thing in LA. Boob jobs. That was another big thing in LA. Um, I knew a girl years ago who was trying to be an extra on Baywatch. I won't say her name.
Mhm.
I actually had a crush on her. And beautiful young lady, but she was very small up here. Well, guess what? She got some work done. She immediately got on a Baywatch, and she had her face done and a bunch of and but then she got into this downhill spiral where she kept getting surgery done, and she went from being actually really really pretty to looking like just the most plastic woman you've ever seen in your entire life. And so for me, plastic surgery, unless they're in a certain profession, that's a huge red flag, because the plastic surgery is not so they feel better about themselves. Women don't dress better for themselves. They don't dress up for other women as they say they do. That's a crock of doo doo. They're dressing that way for male attention. That is the currency for women. Plastic surgery, boob jobs, excuse me, boob lifts. That's that's all for men. Now I've heard women say, "Oh, we do that for I do that I dress that way for other women." No, you don't.
Right.
No, you don't. And so guys don't, but women will judge a man based on his genetic markers. How many women want a guy who's 6 foot or taller?
Yeah.
That's the new almost trope nowadays.
Well,
Almost become a meme.
because what women will say is that high level men date women with a lot of surgery, but they can't tell because it's getting so undetectable now.
Yeah,
That's
and
why I was wondering, like, I saw a TikTok the other day where this woman got a nose. She had a huge nose and it completely changed her face. Like she went from like a 5 probably to an 8 just because
wow, just with a nose.
I mean, she had a really it was bad. It was yeah. So but so a guy dates her. She does that at 18, a guy dates her at 28 and his kids come out with these big honkers,
Yeah, it's
you know.
it's here's the thing. The best thing to do is examine their mother.
Oh yeah, okay.
Examine not just their mother. Look at pictures of their moms when they're younger, and look at pictures of these women when they're younger. If they have social media and their pictures only start 5 years ago, they're hiding something. They either lost a ton of weight, and they're hiding that, which some people do, some people don't. But they're also hiding. They're cutting out the pictures before they got the surgery done. And so, if guys are smart, they'll do that. That's actually a really easy thing to investigate. You don't have to use DNA to look into that. You can actually just use photographs and analyze pictures. Most women, especially older women, keep pictures when they're younger. I've got a neighbor who used to be a model when she was younger. She'll the first thing she'll show people is a picture of when she was a model. And she was actually really, really hot, like 60 years ago. You know what I mean? But that's what women will lean onto. They'll always lean onto their peak beauty
Yeah.
and say that. But guys don't vet women for that sort of thing. Women will look at you. They'll check out your weight. They'll check out your height. All these different things. They will vet for that. But most guys, again, they'll just YOLO and don't really look into it the way they should. And that's because guys don't look at it from, like, my ex um, was, well, is Ukrainian, German, Irish, and so she's literally whiter than you, Carol. Like pale skin, gray eyes, and my background is, my family is Jamaican, but my great grandmother was Taino. South American Indian. My great 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 grandfather was a red-headed Scotsman from Kintyre, Scotland. And so my DNA is all over the place, but I can guarantee she's 5'4". If I had been 5'5" or 5'6", she wouldn't have married me.
Right.
So our son is I'm 6'1", my son is 6 foot tall.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
and
6 foot, so I'm not like
yeah,
like
you're unusually tall for a woman, and
yeah, I
and I don't
know.
mean that in a bad way, but you're an athlete,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
know.
and so like I actually met a woman that actually lied about her height on a dating app.
Really?
Um, she was 6 foot tall in flats,
Oh, I'm the same.
and she put her height as 5'8". And when I met her, I'm looking at her eye to eye, and I'm like, "You're not 5'8". I was like, "You're not
I've
5'8".
never
She's like, "Well."
I've never found that I mean, there was a girl on my team who was 6'5". Men shorter than her tried to hit on her all the time. It wasn't really
Well, that's the short man complex,
yeah.
but a lot of guys don't, from according to her, a lot of guys didn't like tall women. I was like, well, I don't have a problem with height. You know what I mean? That's not my, I don't have a hang up about that.
Yeah.
My big thing is weight, and women routinely use fake pictures on dating apps. That's why I say dating apps are just
Yeah.
garbage.
And
Um,
shapewear too. That's what yeah, I've heard from guys that like like I've heard guys say they've taken a woman home and then she took off the shapewear and he didn't even want to do it. Like
oh my God,
yeah, I know.
that's look, if a guy aborts the mission
I know.
from that stage, it's really got to be bad because
Yeah.
like guys can go in the gutter sometimes, sometimes. But like I've met women, it's probably happened 6 or 7 times where they were heavier. There was one, the most worst one. She was at least 100 pounds heavier than her pictures.
A
And so I get there, we're
100?
meeting. Yeah, she was huge, man. But her
Wow.
pictures were from years ago, and in the pictures from years ago, she looked good. But when she pulled up, she was texting me, "Oh, I'm pulling up now." I see a car pull up, and then I see her get out and start lumbering over because she wasn't really walking. Somebody that big is lumbering, and I was like, and she was late on top of that, which is a big for me. That's a big no. But and she goes, "Well, did you get my coffee from me?" I said, "No." I said, "Coffee is for people who show up on time." I said, "You don't look like your pictures." And she actually got angry and cursed at me. And she said, "Well, when I get coffee, you want me to join you?" I said, "No, you can sit someplace else. You can go someplace else." And a guy who was, I guess because we were sitting outside. I was sitting outside. A guy who was sitting behind me walked up. He said, "The same thing happened to me, bro. It's jacked up." I said, "Yeah, it is, man." And I try to be nice
The
about certain.
filters have gone too far.
Yeah, and so look, pictures I put up, it's me. They're
Yeah.
pictures of me. I'll put pictures when I'm like, just swinging kettlebells or working out, or just regular pictures of me wearing a suit or whatever, or a T-shirt. And I don't try to hide who I am. Why? Because when I show up, this is what you're going to see. you know. And so there's a lot of deception, and again, from women in particular, and I don't say that to be mean or to disparage women. I honestly think it's an adaptive um, a tendency, a survival tendency to maximize what they can do as far as mating strategies go.
Yeah.
And so, for men, here's what I would say to guys: don't get angry. Don't be angry. Don't get angry. Don't get mad. Even if you find out somebody's stepping out on you or whatever, don't be angry. Look at it as a business decision. Look at it as expect a certain amount of deception, and just decide what parameter of deception you're willing to accept, and what's unacceptable to you outside those parameters, because you're going to get some deception, you're going to get some lies, and that's just how it is. Guys lie as well too. I just excuse me. Guys lie as well too, but again, the lies that men tell are incredibly easy to unravel. It's like men cheating. It's almost always somebody at work, almost always somebody at work or somebody he knew from before. Women will, they're so good at hiding it, man. That if we weren't good at what we do, we wouldn't have been able to find out what they were doing. Most private investigators just do surveillance. We do surveillance, but we also, we're really good at problem solving, and we're really good at reverse engineering things and uncovering people's secrets. And again, it's kind of a curse. When I meet people, if I'm around somebody long enough, I can kind of start understanding some of the things they might have buried in their past. And again, it's kind of a curse, just because I don't want to know everything, all the bad stuff about people, but I don't judge people based on it. If you've got a high body count, you can still be a decent person. Do I want to marry you? Maybe not. Maybe not. Because with that high body count, there is a greater um, tendency towards having STDs. Women years ago um, used to always make you wear condoms. They used to always demand it. Now I've met women that said, "Oh, you know what? You can spray it wherever you want to." I wear them just because I don't want to wind up sick. You know what I mean? But,
Yeah.
women don't make men wear condoms like that anymore. Not like they used to, because the technology to fix certain things or mask certain STDs is just so
You can
much
have
better than
you
it
can
was.
have AIDS now and live a decently long. I was like, they cure everything.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
and
it's like
and yeah,
men figure out a way how to cure everything.
yeah,
There's a woman on TikTok bragging that she had AIDS and that she doesn't wear protection. Like, I swear, she's on TikTok. I don't know if it's true because sometimes women just say things for attention online. But I was thinking, I'm like, they've gotten technology to the point that it's so good that, oh no, I think it was herpes, but it was whatever it was, the girl had some STD that was incurable and she didn't wear protection because medicine made it so it doesn't spread as much if she takes something, or I don't know what it was, but I was thinking, I'm like, wow,
yeah,
men are
yeah,
fixing
yeah.
everything. They gave us an extra decade of with IVF. I'm like, they just they come up with
Yeah, look, in the future, just so you know, I'll be making posts about some of the Hollywood parties I went to when I lived in Hollywood. I was actually working for people to escort them to a party,
Mhm.
and nothing like Diddy parties.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. But look, man, the deception and the way people can hide things. Women are so good at hiding things, man. And this is something I learned years ago. Women make the best spies. They make the best spies. They make the best assassins. Why? Because it's easier for a woman to gain people's trust. Like, I've got women that work for me. I'm a pretty good talker, and so when I need to talk to people, I'm actually really really good at getting people to talk to me and giving me information when I'm interviewing people as potential witnesses. A woman without training can gain a man's or a woman's trust much quicker than an average guy can, just because people are more trusting of women. And so with that with that ability to blend in and that chameleon ability to mask their intentions, mask their past, all these different things, guys are woefully underprepared. Like, guys are so far behind. And that's why I started posting some of it, at your prompting, but also too, guys are way behind, man. And whenever I post some of these things, man, you can always tell. Like, I get attacked mostly by women. Like almost like, hey, you're giving up the game. Well, the the game is up. More and more people are looking into the background of women before they get married. If they're smart, they do. Unless it's a person you grew up with and you've known for a very long time, you need to vet her. She's vetting you. If like my ex comes from a wealthy family, and I know for a fact her family did a lot of background on me. And why? Because I was a potential risk. I grew up in the South Bronx. An um, ex-military, ex-cop, ex-civilian military contractor, relatively violent professions, and so they wanted to make sure their daughter was going to be okay. And I get it, and I understand it. Now, when did I vet my ex? No, I did not. And so I learned a lot of these, from a lot of these lessons I learned from myself. Not that she was a bad person. we just didn't get along because of her whole withholding vagina thing.
Mhm.
Uh,
That'll do
just,
it.
look, you know what? Look, man, if you're a guy who gets it regularly, even frequently, and all of a sudden you're getting none, I'm sorry, that's just unacceptable. And
Yeah.
and so so here's something I would say that I would ask you, Pearl. If you could find this out from women or see if this works for women, because I've told a couple of women that I know to use this strategy. They were doing the whole withholding thing. Well, if he doesn't do this, then he doesn't get anything. If he doesn't do that, he doesn't do anything. And what I told a couple of them was this. I said, look, you need to change your strategy. That strategy is a losing and self-destructive strategy. Instead of doing that, pay it forward. I said, if your husband wants a naked lap dance, give him a naked lap dance. If he wants this, give it to him. If he wants that, give it to him. If he's a good guy and you're married well, he's going to volunteer to do all those things for you. He will volunteer. But instead they do the opposite. So from your studies, with all your wisdom, you know what I mean, and knowledge, why 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 do they do the
Because
most self-destructive?
Because there I always say there's 3 players in the marketplace, and men know this, it's the simps, the pimps, and the sexless, and men rotate through these throughout life, so a lot of times they start as sexless, then the only way they get sex is through relationships or simping, right? And a lot of female dating strategies do work, but they work on simps. So that's from my perspective, that's why they do it, is because a guy that's a simp, if his wife withholds sex, and you've met them, like wimpy guys. I mean, they'll
Yeah.
say, "Baby, what do I have to do?" And they'll do it. And then the cycle continues. Women tell other women. I mean, let's be honest, most women marry simps. Like most men that get married, unfortunately, like, you usually they have more value than they know. Like, they have no idea how much sexual access they would have, but a lot married young, so they don't really know.
Yeah, it the women I've told that strategy to that actually used it have actually reported that things are different. Yeah, things are different. And so women don't seem to understand how powerful it is to maintain a healthy sexual relationship with their husbands. It's incredibly powerful. And so I remember when I split with my ex. She actually tried to get back together with me, and I was like, absolutely not. I was like, look, I said I went from getting it whenever I wanted it to, being able to call my shot,
Yeah.
to toward the end 2 or 3 times a year, Pearl. And then when we split, and one of these days I'll tell the story about well, I'll save that for another time.
Mm.
Maybe if we talk again, but
Yeah.
it's an epic tale. That's
You
an epic tale of go ahead.
you
Go ahead,
should
sorry.
you should definitely start, like, a channel. I think it would do really well. Like, even just talking to you now, I wanna hear what you think about, like, Diddy and all this, like I think you
Oh
could
my
do well on
gosh.
YouTube.
Diddy, here's the thing. I've got a good pal who I grew up with in the Bronx, and he wound up adult. And you sign up for that. That's one thing, but people were being drugged,
Yeah.
and so have I seen things like that? Yes, out in Hollywood, not to that extent. Um, I've had doing executive protection work. Again, I probably learned more about female nature doing executive protection work than even the private investigation stuff. But people have to be careful. It's not just look. It's not just women that have to be careful from people trying to do things to them. If people knew how many men were actually violated physically, you'd be stunned. But most guys won't report things like that. You know, how many guys want to say, yeah, this happened to them? Not very many, you know. And so, yeah, the Diddy thing is, it's barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot more that comes out, and people, you know, look, I'm not a perfect person, and if someone looks into my background, here's what they'll find. Yeah, sometimes he's a jerk. Sometimes he's an a-hole. I don't like him, or this and that. Here's what they'll never say. They'll never say I'm dishonest. They'll never say I ever took advantage of anybody. I never cheated anybody. If anything, I'm too honest. And you know, sometimes people don't like that, but there are guys out there, and women, unfortunately, there are evil women. And so when you talk about Hollywood, and it goes along with the Diddy thing. When I lived in Marina Del Rey. I lived in Culver City. I bought a sailboat, lived on a sailboat in Marina Del Rey, and also lived in Hollywood, like right near the American Film Institute. I had a roommate that was a soap opera. We had a soap actor. We had another buddy that was a soap actor, and we knew a bunch of B-list actors. One of my neighbors was a costume designer for several, you know, movies, and so we got invited to parties all the time. And in Hollywood and in the music industry, there are just as many predatory women as there are men. You know, people think it's just guys.
Oh,
It's not.
completely.
Not guys.
That's what I don't know what women expect when they I had Brittany Renner on my show, and she broke up with PJ Washington because he was unfaithful. And I told her, I was like, "What did you expect? It's an athlete. I mean, you don't sign if you
Yeah.
don't want athlete problems. There's an engineer down the street that's, willing to be faithful to you."
Look, I don't care. I don't care if you're a Shaolin monk. I've seen guys get wave after wave after wave of beautiful, attractive women throwing themselves
Yeah.
at them over and over again. I don't care who you are. At some point, you're going to break.
Yeah.
But you have to, you know.
No.
And so, good. Sorry.
No, there was oh my gosh, there was this one guy that would come on my show, and every time he would talk about how wrong, like, cheating was for men. And I found that a lot of the guys that virtue signal like that publicly, they do the same thing behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
black pilled me a little bit. I'm like, So Myron was the one that was being honest, and I thought he was being an ass. Like, because on his show, he would just say high value men cheat or whatever. And then I would think, but the guys lying, they get the applause because everyone says how awesome it is, that they think cheating's wrong.
Well, high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals, do have, like, look, smart women that marry these guys, and I've known a bunch of these circumstances and situations. They know these guys are messing around, but there's an unwritten or unspoken rule. Yes, you're going to do what you're going to do. Just keep it out of the public eye, and don't create any children, and don't embarrass me. And so, as long as you maintain those rules, those are the old school rules. Now, there are women who think that the power of their vagina is so strong that this guy who has all the power and money on the earth is just going to be under the sway of her one vajayjay,
Good
that he's
luck.
never going to be tempted. It doesn't work that way.
Good luck. I mean,
Yeah,
the only time I see it happen is if the guy married before he figured out what he could do. So, like, if he
yeah,
married before he could become like a pimp, I mean, it's a placeholder term, right? But
yeah,
but if he realizes it, good
yeah.
luck. Good luck.
Look, and again, I know women, like I told you, the one who lets her husband go to a brothel once a month. She lets him fly into a brothel once a month, but he makes an extraordinary income. His other wives divorced because, he was constantly messing around with women all over the place. He At one point he had women kept in apartments all around Los Angeles County, like 5 or 6 women. Like he was balling like that. He was making a
Yeah.
ton of money. Like, the guy was liquid. He was filthy rich, and but he was making a scene of it, and these women got embarrassed. No, nobody wants to be embarrassed or humiliated,
Yeah.
but nobody wants it thrown in their face. And so this other one was like, okay, you know what? You can go to a brothel and spend it. Like, she lets him spend a weekend at a brothel, which, it's not cheap, but for a guy like him, it's a drop in the bucket. And she does it because, hey, look, It's for the his financial, his ability to produce is directly tied to how much he's able to screw around. He's just one of these guys. The guy's a genius and a money making machine, but he's one of these guys that has different appetites, and his appetite is he likes different women. And
Yeah.
this next one, she has a very business like attitude about it. Most women wouldn't have that, but the other women like, okay, let's look at something in the public eye. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Maria Shriver. Okay, everybody look, Arnold. Everybody in Hollywood, Arnold was a dog for a long time. Everybody knew that. She knew that. She expected it. She's a Kennedy.
Yeah.
I know somebody out there will be like, oh, well, he should have been. Yeah, whatever, whatever. Look, she's a Kennedy. She knows what's what. He only got in trouble because what? He produced a child.
Yeah. That'll
He,
do
he
it.
produced a child. Yeah, and he put a spotlight on it, and so she had to walk away from him. But he was like that wasn't the first woman he messed around with.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
she wasn't. And so women that uh, want to marry guys that are these high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, they need to make friends with the fact that they are not going to be the only one. If they can let their egos
Yeah.
do that, that's
Well,
just
and a lot of women just don't have the temperament for it. They're too jealous. Like,
yeah.
you know.
I don't know if it's jealousy or if it's just they don't want the ego hit that their magic box that they think is so special is not that special.
Yeah.
I think that's some of it as well too. But so yeah, there's a whole hidden world that goes on. Secret sex work is a real thing. It is becoming more and more prevalent. I know women that have 9 to 5 jobs that do sex work on the side for extra money. I know women that have plenty of money, but they use sex work as a way of instead of having a boyfriend or a relationship, they use sex work when they want to get laid. They put themselves up for hire or whatever and get satisfied and then go back to business as usual. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on that people will have no idea, um, you know, about how far down the rabbit hole some of this stuff goes, and they'd be shocked. Some of the women they know, I would probably say 3 or 4 out of the 10 women most people know are doing or have done some kind of sex work. It's that much, and it's just growing. And so, from a guy's perspective, you better be vetting women.
Yeah.
You better vet them. You better understand what they're, and again,
Yeah.
there are some guys that don't mind women that have done sex work.
Yeah.
Some guys don't mind, but at least if you can make an informed decision.
I said 1 out of 5 and people said I was being dramatic or it's just the city women, and I'm like, "You got
It,
okay.
it's higher. It's higher. It's
Okay."
much higher. And people try to show me these statistics and everything else, and I'm like, look, I'm not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. A friend of mine used to call psychiatry and psychology the science of excuses. I've talked to psychiatrists. I think they're really good at making what they say sound intelligent and well thought out. But I go by what I see, and I go by the work I've done and the things I've witnessed. And what I've witnessed is different from the information they put out there. They've also said that there's no discernible effect on a woman's body count. It has a profound effect on them, both physically and emotionally. Like how many women that have high body counts are alcoholics, drug addicts, have other mental health and emotional issues? A ton. It has a profound effect on them. I have friends. Like I have a good friend. She literally looked like an anime character. She was beautiful naturally. And the as time went on, she started collecting tattoos and piercings
Yeah.
and all these different things, man, to where she doesn't look like the same person. And now she's on different drugs and all the rest of the stuff she got prescribed. and she has an extraordinary body count. When I say extraordinary, I mean like a lot. Like some of these sex workers I've talked to, they got body counts in the thousands. Like they've been with literally thousands upon thousands of guys. And so if they understand anything, they understand human nature better than most people do. And they understand men better than a lot of women do. Why? Because a lot of guys that go see them are going to see them because they're missing something, not just the sex. That's
Yeah.
part of it. But there's a lot more to it than that. And yeah, they are paying for that. They're paying for a performance. But the fact that a married guy, most of their clients are married, the fact that a married guy has to pay a woman to act like they like him is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because they're not getting it at home. But like these women who have these extraordinary body counts, it takes a toll on them. And anybody who says it doesn't is, I get it. If you're one of these women that fall in that category, you don't want to say that you made a mistake. And so I get it. But what they're doing is they're painting a picture for other women that's not really giving them an honest depiction of what their life is really like. If most of them are honest, their lives are miserable. Like no woman really wants to be alone and childless.
Mm.
Not really, not biologically. And so when they've done all these things, like I had one woman was going back and forth with me on X. She was like, "Oh, I get picked every week." I said, "Okay, that explains a lot. You get picked every week. You're not getting picked every week. You're getting picked up every week. And then after they pick you up, they're setting you back down again so someone else can pick you up again. So you're not being picked. You're not getting chosen. You're getting picked, but you're not being chosen. And so the women that have these body counts at the end of the day, if you're a guy who's with them,
Mhm.
you're not getting the best of them.
Yeah.
And so, I look at it like this: take a bag of potato chips, right? Open it up and take a chip out and pass it around to 100 guys and then get it back. What do you have left over? You got a wrinkled bag with a bunch of crumbs. Is that what you want for a life mate? Not really. Is that what you want as the mother of your children?
Mhm.
Not really. And so, guys need to be more discerning. They need to be a lot more discerning than they are. The main criteria can't be that like that one guy I know, she has big boobs.
Yeah.
Now she had extraordinary boobs,
Mhm.
like they were extraordinary. But what they
Right.
were, and we all saw them because we all went to the same strip club. She used to she
Yeah.
used to work there, but it can't be just that she's willing to have sex with you. And guys that are at that stage where they're not having sex with women, they're very vulnerable to that type, and it's an attack. It's an attack on your central nervous system and everything else. Oh my gosh, this woman gave me this. I love her. Well, you don't really love her. You love the fact that she was the only woman who's willing to show you some attention, and she's willing to get married to you, and all the rest of these things. And again, a lot of it is very very deceptive. And when I said that on X, I was like, look, this is what most guys want, and women were like, well, you can't, why should a woman be obliged to have sex with her husband? And I said, okay, look at it from the man's perspective. If a woman is willing to marry you, isn't it reasonable to assume that she also wants to sleep with you? That she's not completely disgusted by you? Yeah, I would. You would make that assumption if you were a guy, right? So guys are marrying women that don't really want them, and so that deception is from the very very beginning. And so, when you look at guys that are getting so, like, I've seen guys that were completely wrecked emotionally, and so the toll, people talk about the toll on women. The toll on men is, and from my perspective, and we're talking about regular guys. I'm not talking about guys that have, committed acts of domestic violence, although violence, it's about 50-50, men and women. I saw that when I was a cop. Men initiated violence just as much as men did, maybe a little bit more. It's just that, if a woman hits me, um, what sort of effect is it going to have on me? Versus me hitting a woman. I've got multiple black belts. I used to box. I do combatives. If I hit somebody, if I hit a woman, she's going to be hurt. If she hits me, not a big deal, right? And so, and that's most men. And so, when you look at the toll guys pay, not just the financial toll. It's a heavy financial toll because the family courts are set up to protect women. They're not set up to help men at all. They're set up to turn guys into victims. Um, the the way people part from you. This happened to me. People that I thought were friends of both of ours, when I got separated, a lot of these guys that were all the couples that we knew, they parted from me like the Red Seas did for Moses. Like nobody wanted anything to do with me.
Yeah.
And so that's okay. Your friends group is gone. And then I got gaslighted and called insecure, and I was emotionally abusive and all the rest of the stuff. I've never laid a hand on a woman in my entire life, and I wouldn't. It's just not my thing. And then there's the toll men pay with their children, and nobody really cares about what guys go through. I've seen it. Now, me, I got custody of my son, and I was fortunate enough, but I had to do pretty much a deal with the devil.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like most guys don't get their kids. I wanted to be able to raise my son, and I think I did an outstanding job. He's an outstanding young man. But how many guys I know haven't seen their children? And then paternity fraud. I've got two two men I know. Um, One guy was a good friend of mine. He was paying child support for three different children. After they did this is after he all the child support payments were all done. He found out that two of those three is from the same woman. Two of those three children weren't even his.
Wow.
Two of the three weren't his, and he was paying child support for them. And she knew they weren't his. And are the family courts going to refund that money he paid for 18 plus
No.
years, whatever it was?
No.
No, they're not. There was another guy in LA I knew, same thing. His ex-wife she filed for divorce. She got alimony and child support. They had children. And so he had a limo company. He wound up having to sleep in one of his cars. And so, because she was getting so much money. California, if you get married in California, you're just signing your own, you're signing up for your own demise. And so he bust his tail, started making more money. And when she saw he was making more money, she took him back to court for more. And so then he went from having an apartment again to back to living in his car again. And so he's doing all this stuff for years. Then he finds out that one of those children, or not even one or two of those children, weren't his, and he wound up deleting himself. Because and people don't care about the stresses men go under, because as men we're told to just deal with it. And I was told the same thing. Just do what you got to do and deal with it. But my father was a little bit wiser than I was, and he actually tried to warn me. He actually tried to warn me not to not to go down the road I went, and I didn't listen, and and I paid a price for it. And so I should have listened to my dad. God rest his soul. But he was smarter than me, and he passed on a lot of knowledge. Now my son is smart. He's smarter than I was, and so he's actually listening to his father. But there's a lot of men that are in a lot of pain, but everything is set up towards looking after women. Nobody gives two what's about guys. And so a lot of the stuff I work, a lot of stuff I talk about is to warn men, is to give them information. And usually the voices trying to shut me down are probably the same voices trying to shut you down. Women who want to continue the facade, and the guys who are these white knight, um,
They just they
knucklehead.
don't want to believe it.
I Yeah, I think there's probably an element of it to that. And again, a lot of people would rather, believe the Disney story than the ugly truth. Look, the truth can get incredibly ugly. I deal in the truth on a regular basis. The truth is ugly. But if you understand the truth, then guess what? You can make a decision. And I think with some of these women, if they were honest about their past, some of these men might still have accepted them.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, it's a big rug pull if you think you married a Mercedes Benz S class with 100 miles on it, but you really got an old 80, 89 Yugo with a million miles on it,
Yeah.
with an S-class body kit on it. And there's a huge difference, man. Women that have been around too much, and I think how much is different for every woman, but your chances of having a woman that's going to be loyal and treat you the way men want to be treated
Mm.
is
Just slim.
slim and none, and slim just left time.
Yeah. Well, thank you
You know,
so
so,
much for coming on today.
well, thank you for having me on. I apologize for running off at the mouth so much. Sometimes I get diarrhea of the mouth. But you're an easy person to talk to. But that's why you're so good at this.
Yeah, well, this is the most entertained I've been in a while, so we'll definitely have you back. Do you want to tell the people where they can find you one more time before we close out?
Sure. On You can send me a DM on Twitter. Just look for Private Eye Russ. AndersonSecurityConsulting.com. So it's Russell, Russell, at AndersonSecurityConsulting.com, or Anderson Security Consulting on Gmail. I am in the works of making videos for YouTube. And so I'm kind of a perfectionist. And so I keep redoing things over and over and over and over again.
Okay.
And so at some point I'll start putting out videos as well too. But again, I want to thank you for being the inspiration for starting to post in the first place.
Yeah, no, your stories are super interesting. So I started seeing them and I was like, he's got to figure out Twitter because these have to get out. These are so entertaining.
Well, thank you again. And thank you for having me on, bro.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of Pearl Daily. That's our last story for today. So make sure you guys go to theaudacitynetwork.com so we can have more guests just like this on the show. As you guys know, we are currently demonetized. So the way that you can support me is to go to the website and get my monthly membership. That's $10 a month or $80 for the year. This helps us bring guests on, pay staff, and also fund our documentaries. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Like the video on your way out, subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you next time.